Hello, friends! Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Today's episode, Newby Tuesdays. We're going to be talking about higher order functions, part 2. So if you look in the episode description, a couple of weeks ago, we did part 1, and today we're going to be doing part 2, which is going to be filter and reduce. Are you there, Tony?
Yes, I am.
Oh, man. Just a second. They can't hear you. Do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Say hello, Tony.
Hello, hello, hello.
There you go. The internet can hear you now. Yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, can you see my screen, Tony?
I can.
Cool. Okay. Everyone let me know if you can hear Tony all right, if you can hear me all right, if I need to turn him up a little bit or turn him down, I'm up all the way. I can't really go up anymore. Let me know. So what we're going to do is just a quick review of what we talked about last time. Kind of just get warmed up in the idea of talking about higher order functions and first class functions and passing functions around. And then we'll get into filter. We'll learn about filter and we'll do some exercises with filter. How's that sound to you, Tony?
Sounds great.
Cool. This repo is linked in the description, so if you do want to clone it down, you can check it out. And there also is a solutions branch where you can see the code that Tony and I wrote last time to solve some of the exercises that are in there. Doosan says, it's 11:29 p.m. at my place. I'm drunk. I will watch this tomorrow. Awesome. Have a good night, man. Oh, and I totally forgot. An anonymous donation of sorts. I don't know who did it, but yesterday someone donated $100. I'm just going to play the notification real quick. Your average dork donated $100 yesterday. Your average dork, I don't know who you are, but thank you so much. Hopefully you didn't type an extra zero. But thank you. That's amazing. And Mert John. Okay. I was pronouncing I was saying Mert Khan, but Mert John. And let me know if that works out. Okay. Let's do this, Tony. First things first, first class functions. So, quick review of what it means to have first class functions. So, JavaScript is a language with first class functions, and a programming language is said to have first class functions when those functions in the language are treated like any other variable. So for example, in such a language, a function can be passed as an argument to other functions. Now, we do this in JavaScript, we do it all the time. And so the simple fact that you can take an anonymous function like this and put it in a variable, that is a language that has first class functions. Cool. What say you about that, Tony?
I say basically my takeaway is that like you said, basically functions can almost be viewed as any other variable or object.
Cool.
Within JavaScript.
And that's a good thing to keep in mind, because when we're working with map filter reduce, we're literally passing it a function that it's going to call for us. So just a quick exercise, Tony. I want you to create a variable called hello and put inside of it an anonymous function that just logs hello to the console. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so create a variable called hello. I'm going to enhance and store an anonymous function inside of it. You might have to remember the syntax.
Anonymous function.
I can show you maybe how we did it. Well, that wouldn't be it. In the example we saw on the README, this is an anonymous function. So it's using the arrow function syntax, but basically that's your variable, and then that's your function on the right-hand side. So give it a try.
Okay. All right.
Oh, and Ali is saying that they tuned into my Trello clone videos, and there apparently is something built into Feathers that I didn't know about. I'll have to check that out. I am going to do a part 4 soon. One thing I'm going to do in the part 4 is just refactor. Our code has gotten really messy. So I'm going to refactor. I'll definitely look into that method. Okay, Tony, we're just getting warmed up. We're defining a variable here. What's wrong with what you have right here?
Trying to think.
So think about it like, okay, how would you define a variable and store the number 5 inside of it? Create a variable
Uh,
called a and put the number 5 inside of it.
I would just say a. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Am I making this a string?
You need to make something a string, but that's not what you need to make a string.
Okay.
Bear with me, Tony. Forget about what you did down there. Create a variable called a, create a variable called a, and put the value 5 inside of it.
Okay. Variable a equals 5.
Okay, awesome. So you can do the same thing, but you can use const instead of var, right? So if you
I just said const equals. I didn't say anything.
right. So when you're declaring a variable, the equal sign doesn't go there because it says const and then the name of your variable.
Okay. All right. So, well, we're gonna keep hello as a string.
No.
Oh, why am I making more strings? Oh my god. Okay. So const
Okay.
hello
Yes.
equals our function.
If we look at this, so the thing on the left-hand side of the equals sign, that is our variable. Const hello is our variable. The thing on the right-hand side, this is our value, and this is our anonymous function. And I actually want you to log the string hello. Actually, log the string hello world right here. Yeah, and so this is where you would need to use quotes, because if you just said hello, then we would be logging the function itself. Cool. And we're going to use single quotes because we're in CJ land. Cool. So this is it. Like, the fact that we are creating this function, storing it in this variable, and then right there, Tony, I would like you to invoke this function so that we actually see hello world log to the console. Boom. Just like that. And the fact that even though this is a variable, we could put anything else we want inside of it, the fact that we have a function inside of there means we can use this invocation syntax. So we're getting warmed up. We're talking about first class functions. Cool. And actually, let's see if I can turn on Quokka. We can see what this would output. Yes, so when you invoke this function, this will output hello world. Very good. All right, Tony, in your own words, what does it mean for a language to have first class functions?
First class function is when a function can either accept a function as an argument or return a function.
No, that's higher order functions.
That's higher order functions.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that soon.
Functions.
Yeah, so we just talked about first class functions. What does that mean?
I guess I had that confused. I thought that was...
Well, what we just did here, what did we do?
We made a function as a variable.
Yes, and that is first class functions. Because now that it's a variable, it can be passed around and returned. Okay, so this is first class functions. And then now we'll talk about higher order functions. So last time we talked about identifying some higher order functions that we've seen before. So this is the definition that you just gave me, but this describes higher order functions, not just first class functions.
Okay, so
go ahead.
First class functions more of a variable thing.
Yes, and higher order functions are the fact that a function can take a function as a parameter or return a function as a value or return value. So higher order functions are functions that take in a function as an argument or return a function as a result. So where you've seen this before is something like adding an event listener. So the fact that this add event listener function takes in a function as a parameter means that add event listener is a higher order function. Cool. And then, so typically, like when you see this defined, it's just inline, right? Like that. And you might also see, we'll show another example. You might also see it instead of with a fat arrow with just an anonymous function. But for the most part, there are some caveats here, but for the most part, these two things are doing pretty much the same thing. We're defining the function, and then the browser will store that, and then later on when the click happens, it'll actually invoke that function. Let's take a quick stretch. And Mertjan, actually, I should look up the pronunciation of your name, Mertjan. I don't want to be totally wrong. We said it's close enough. But yes, so like sometimes on Newby Tuesdays, me and Tony will just like build something. I'll kind of like coach him through coding up. But this one specifically is Tony is learning about higher order functions and map, filter, and reduce. Last time, I think we went for like 2.5 hours Tony did really well last time. Hey Juan, welcome to the stream. How did you feel about last time, Tony?
I feel like I did pretty well last time too. I was actually in a conversation during a surgical case today about how like I've been doing this with you and how sometimes like it would like power through and then other times I'm just like fried at the end of the day.
Yeah, we're not gonna go as long today, so it should be better. Um, and you'll notice though, Tony, uh, if you don't use it, you lose it. So last time we spent like 2 hours and you got through all of this stuff, but it's taking a little bit of refreshing to become familiar with it again. And really, this section is just talking about like you've seen these before, like add event listener. That's a higher order function. Also, something like fetch or Axios or jQuery Ajax. That is a higher order function because you give it a function to call whenever the data comes back, right? And in this case, like promises are technically the dot then of a promise is a higher order function because the dot then function accepts a function so that it can call later on. And then I really just show like this example, but rewritten with variables. So you can define them in line like that, but you can also store those exact same functions in variables and then pass them in the same way. Those two pieces of code, like this code and this code, do exactly the same thing, but it's just really two different ways to write it. Cool. And Sal, hello. Thank you. Thanks for the good luck. Alvaro is asking, what is the name of the shortcut I use to evaluate code? It's called Quokka, and actually I'll do that next. So I guess I didn't have any exercises for this. Let's just do a quick exercise, Tony. What could we do? Let's do this. We're gonna have a basic HTML file. Not that one. Basic HTML. We're going to have a button. It's gonna say click me. And we want to add a click event listener to that button. So we'll bring in this exercise file. And actually, this isn't the best example because you can't really use Quokka with DOM code. Better example, we're going to install node fetch. All right, so here's what I'm going to do, Tony. In this O1 directory, I'm going to npm install node fetch.
Okay.
And then we can bring it into the file and actually make a fetch out to an API. I guess I need an npm file so that it saves it. Cool. So in here, I'm going to bring in fetch from node fetch. And we're going to fetch the Reddit API. www.reddit.com/r/ what's your favorite subreddit, Tony?
Birds with arms.
Birds with arms. Okay. And I would like you to make a fetch request to this URL. I can kind of, if you have questions, I can kind of like coach you through it, but just give it a try and talk me through your process.
Okay, so first we're going to, are we calling anything or are we just doing the fetch request?
We are calling fetch. So here's what you do. Invoke fetch and pass in the URL as a parameter. Okay. Now fetch returns a promise, so we need to do .then on there. So do a .then, no spaces, no curly braces, just .then. And we should be able to demo this with Quokka. So .then, and then you invoke it. And here, we'll define the function outside of this, but let's pass in a function called response.json. Just the name of the function, no period, just response.json, and you can capitalize JSON if you want. Okay, so this, don't invoke it. This is just going to be a function that we define, and we're going to define that right here. So define a function called response.json. Whoa, is my caps lock on? Try. Okay. Okay, and this will take in as a parameter response.
Okay.
So inside the parentheses, you need to put response. Yep.
Response.
Response. And
All
this
right.
function will return response.json. And invoke JSON. Okay, what is wrong with this, Tony?
I need to capitalize JSON.
No.
Return response.
What? Let me grab the mouse.
Sure.
How do you return something from a function?
Oh, I need a space.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of did it all as like one thing.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. So, this is higher order functions in action because we define this function here and we're passing it into the dot then. So the fact that we're passing it that function is a higher order function. Okay, we're going to do one more thing. Do a dot then right there at the end of this dot then. And then invoke it. And we're going to pass in another function that we'll define. Let's call this log result. Okay, and then right above this, let's define a function called log result. This will take in one parameter result and then just log it to the console. Okay, Tony. Let's see if Quokka will run on this file. Quokka. Oh, I need to do .json right there. There we go. And so we can actually see when I I code with no hands. The person I have on the call with me is coding. Okay. This is Quokka in action. So the fact that anything that you console log will kind of just like show it off to the side there. And you can actually see that we are getting back some data from Reddit. Okay, Tony, tell me, why is .then considered a higher order function?
Because it's returning response JSON, which is returning something else.
Not quite. So not even thinking about this function here, but why is .then a higher order function? So think back to what are the two reasons something would be a higher order function?
Because it's returning a function,
That's one way that it's a higher order function. What is
or
the
it's
other?
accepting a function as an argument.
Right. And what is this doing?
This is making a promise.
You have two options, Tony. Are we looking at something that takes in a function as an argument or returns a function as a result? Right here.
Oh, it's returning as a result.
You're thinking about this. Don't even think about response JSON. And if I told you it's not that, it's the other thing. So what is it?
It's an argument.
Yes. Okay. It's a little bit confusing because this function is returning something, but technically this function is not returning a function. This function is returning a function invocation. So it's returning whatever JSON actually returns, which is a promise, which is not necessarily a function. It's getting a little tricky, but the main reason right here .then is a higher order function is because it's accepting a function as an argument. And response JSON is an argument. It is a function that we're passing in, and then same thing right here, like log result is a function, and we're passing that as an argument to the .then. Am I confusing you?
No, I think I got it.
Okay. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. Just want you to be correct.
I know it's just like they're so like similar, I guess, in like concept to me that I guess it almost just seems like it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to think about though is like when you're looking at the return value of a function is like whatever this returns is what will eventually be returned. So even though we're returning a function invocation, this would be something like JSON. Well, actually, well, this is what it would be, because this is actually creating a promise. And then we're returning the promise. So notice that this function isn't returning a function, it's returning a promise.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Hello, Professor Elements. Welcome to the stream. Okay. Like I said, we're getting warmed up. This was just like looking at examples of higher order functions, like ones that we've seen before. Great. We'll do one for each example, but last time we kind of talked about how you can write for loops, you can iterate over things, but it's also possible to use this thing called for each, which is a higher order function on the array prototype, meaning every single array that we create has this thing called for each. We can pass it a function, and that function will get run on every single element in the array. So an example here is, if you're just doing this with a regular plain old for loop, you would say, well, define your array, then you would iterate from 0 up to the length of that array, grab each number from the array, and then log that number out. Right, so this is going to run for every number in the array. This does exactly the same thing, but instead of using a for loop, it uses for each. But this is like a very gentle introduction to higher order functions, because we're defining a function that takes in a number and then just logs that number. And what for each will do is it will take that function and call it on every single value inside of the array. Okay, let's try an exercise. Let's create some names. So we're gonna throw Mert John. I'm gonna do my homework tonight. I'm gonna pronounce your name right next time. We're gonna throw Ollie in there. We're gonna throw Will I Am. We're gonna throw Professor Elements. And Quellhorst. Quellhorst? I think that's how you say it. Okay, Tony. We have here an array of names. We want to use for each to log each name from this array. I will not forget Robin. Robin, definitely won't forget you. There you go. Sorry, but okay. I want you to write a for each that logs every name in this array. You can look at the example we had here. So like we did a few different for eaches here, but like products is an array, right? And then we're calling products for each, and then we're just logging the name of the product. In this case, we're not dealing with objects, we're just dealing with strings. So write a for each that just logs each string.
Okay, so we're gonna do names, yeah, for each.
Yes.
Name.
Mm-hmm.
Squiggly boop. Doody doot. And then we're gonna do name and just name.
Just name, cool. And this will do it. So, because the thing to think about is you can name this parameter whatever you want, right? But in our case, we're calling it name because these are names, and because this represents each value in the array, this is just a string. So you just log the string itself. Cool. I should be able to start Quokka on here. There we go. And our for each logs each element in the array. One thing we talked about last time is there are different ways to write a fat arrow function or an arrow function. This is perfectly fine, but one thing you might also do is if your arrow function only has a single line, you can write it like this, and it will do exactly the same thing. However, now Quokka doesn't know how to log it because it's like not on its own line. Let's take a quick stretch. Okay, but Tony, can you explain to me what is happening here with this for each? Like what are we doing?
Basically we're taking our array,
okay,
and then we're saying that for each thing in this array, we are going to have a name. But like you said, this could be anything that we decide. In this case, we're just giving it like a term that means a singular version of our plural array. And then we're going to say console.log each individual name.
Cool. And to get a little bit more meta about this, like what's really happening is we're defining this function. We're giving it to for each, and we're saying, hey, for each, for everything in this array, call this function on it. And by doing that, it will log every name in the array. Okay. Also, so a comment from Robin: if you do stuff like data.forEach and you are searching for a singular data name, don't use thing or item, use datum. Okay, I guess that's how you can be. Is that technically like a mathematical term, or like a data sciencey statistical term? I don't know. Appreciate the comment. Okay, so that's for each. Pretty basic stuff. We'll skip over accumulator pattern, but we'll do one exercise with map. So this was the first of the major higher order functions that we talked about last time: map, filter, and reduce. And the way map works is you give it a function, and it will call that function on every element in the array, and whatever that function returns will be put into a brand new array. So the biggest use case for map is when you want to create a new array from an existing array. I believe I have a diagram here. Let's see this image. Yes, so let's say you start off with an array with the values 1, 2, and 3. And you want to end up with a brand new array with the values 2, 4, and 6. You could define a function called double that takes in a number, multiplies it by 2, and returns it. And then you take that function and you call it on every single element in the array, and the return values get put into a brand new array. So if we see some examples here, and actually we can see this written with for each instead of a map. So with for each, you would define your empty array outside of the for each, and then inside of the for each, you just push into that array. And then when the for each is done, you end up with a new array that had something done to each element. But the way you do this with map is you don't have to create a new variable, because map itself will return a new array, and whatever the function you pass it returns will be the value of each item in the new array. So to write this with map, you would basically say numbers.map. You pass in a function that takes in a number, returns that number times 2. So when we actually run this, we're going to get a brand new array with the values 2, 4, and 6. And I think we have an example of that. I could probably run it with Quokka. Quokka. Cool. So you see, in this case, we started off with an array that had 1342 and 1337. And then when we ran a map over it, multiplied each number by 2, stored it in this variable called double numbers, that is now an array with each of the values doubled. Sound good, Tony?
Sounds good. So
Sounds
basically,
good.
it's like for each, but you have like, I guess, a little more attributes you can assign to it.
Yeah, and the main thing that you can't forget is you're returning some value. And the value that you return will be what shows up in the new array that gets created. Okay, let's do a quick example. Let's just do a similar one. Let's say good numbers is an array. Actually, just trying to think of something a little bit more original. Here we go. It's gonna be it may be super simple. I don't know. Okay. Well, let's say this. We have foods, and this is an array with some emojis in it. So we're gonna have a chicken. We're gonna have some corn.
Are emojis technically strings?
They are Unicode characters, so when you put them inside of quotes, they can be inside of a string.
Okay.
Hey Pedro, welcome to the stream. So right now we are doing higher order functions. So we're doing a review of last time. We're about to get into filter. We're just doing one last review of map, and then we'll get into that. And I'm pairing with my good friend Tony, who is a noob at this stuff. So I'm coaching him through it. He's kind of asking questions. Okay, this is gonna be a weird one, Tony, but it's kind of fun. So I want to end up with a new array called cooked, where wherever the chicken was should return a chicken leg that was cooked, and wherever the corn was should return a popcorn because that's cooked. Okay.
Okay.
So, oh, screen freeze. It's the bane of my existence. Okay, just a second. I really thought it was my USB hub, but I plugged the screen directly into the computer. I'm gonna have to return this thing. All right, back momentarily. Don't go too far. Be right back. We're streaming, but we're getting dropped frames. Okay. Maybe. No, I'll be right back again. Technically we're back, but it's dropping frames. Okay, I hate to do this, but it will be one or two more minutes. I'll be right back. Okay. All right. We're rocking and rolling. Give it a few seconds. Oh yes, and Robin noticed I'm wearing a Coding Train t-shirt. I just got it in the mail like 2 days ago. Pretty excited about it. I don't know if you can tell, but it's rainbow. One of them is blue, and I have a blue screen, so it's like technically transparent right there. I don't know. All right, can you hear me, Tony?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so I want you to first declare a variable. Let's call it cooked foods because we're gonna write a map that returns. Actually, can you control my screen right now?
Hold on. Let me see. I'm typing. Nothing's happening.
Okay, I might need to restart the share. Just a second. You can still see my screen though, right?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see the beautiful emojis.
Okay. Try again.
Okay. All right. No, still nothing.
Oh, let me double check. Try now.
Nothing.
Are you sure, man?
Yeah.
Technical difficulties are the bane of my existence here. Let me let me just create a new screen share. Sorry everyone, we'll be back very short. Wait, you were controlling my mouse just now.
Was I?
Yeah.
Weird.
Okay, I'll create a new screen share.
Okay.
I'll stick around. You can still see me, but I'm gonna create a new share for Tony. See you, Robin. Thanks for tuning in. And yes, Coding Train.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, click that link. Let me know when you can see my screen. Oh, hello, Tony. Okay, try now. There we go. Okay. So, declare a variable called cooked foods. So we're going to write a map that creates a new array called cooked foods. What did you just do?
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Okay.
Your volume dropped.
Did it?
Yeah.
Give me a second, Tony.
Okay, wait. Maybe I can try messing with your, Say something?
Check 1, 2.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Just write the code. Hey, Carlos, welcome to
Okay.
the stream. All right, so define a variable called cooked foods. Okay? And we're going to do a map over foods. So we're going to set cooked foods equal to a map of foods. Nope. Yep. Okay. And then we invoke map. And what does map accept? It's very similar to for each.
It's gonna be setting.
But what does it accept? A function. The answer is a function. So
Okay, it's accepting a function.
yeah, so we need to define a function that takes in one argument. And you can call that whatever you want. There's probably things that you could... No. No. Okay. Look how we did it here. So we had an array of people. We created a function that took each peep and returned something from that. So we're going to do something very similar down here. So we need a function that takes in one parameter. You can call it whatever you want. And it will return something.
Okay.
What are you going to call it? Food. I like that.
Okay, so it's gonna do.
Okay. And our logic is basically, if there was a chicken, we want it to be a chicken leg. And if there was a popcorn, we want it to be... Oh, sorry, if there was a corn, we want it to be a popcorn.
Yeah. So we would return.
Well, I wouldn't do a return immediately, because let's just, like, write out an if statement. So you need to write out this logic. So, like, if the food is a chicken.
Or how about, like, if food is raw?
Well, food is either going to be this or this.
Oh, okay, we're actually gonna say, like, what that is.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm gonna copy that.
sure. Just make sure you put it in quotes.
So, so if food is that. Oh, it's not let me do the copy.
Oh, God. Well, that was the screen share. We might get some random people joining us. There you go. So
Okay.
if the food was a chicken, we want there to be a chicken leg in the resulting array. So how is that going to work?
Okay, so we're gonna do if that's that, then return, and then we would include our chicken leg here.
Yeah, and I'll do it for you. Chicken. There we go. Okay.
Else, food, or we do else if or else.
If you do want to check it, you'll need an else if.
Okay. Else if food equals, and can you throw the corn in there?
I got you. Sorry.
Return popcorn.
Got you. Okay, and then we'll log out foods. Quokka's messing up. Let's do a... There we go. Good job, Tony. So this was some interesting logic because we did have we weren't just like returning a single thing, but we started with an array of raw food. We mapped over it and created a new array of cooked food. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's move on to filter. So that was like a 40-minute review of what we did last time, but it's good to get warmed up again, get the juices flowing before we jump into filter. Okay, so let's talk about what is filter. The filter method creates a new array with all elements that pass the test implemented by the provided function. And filter is a higher order function. So filter will return a new array, just like map. However, the array that gets returned from filter may not have all of this, it may not have the same number of elements, because you're going to write a function that decides whether or not that given element should appear in the new array. So your function that you pass to filter returns true if the current element should appear in the array, and returns false if the current element should not appear in the array. So to see an example of that, let's say we're given an array and we want to figure out, we want to get only the values from that array that are even. So we would start with the array on the left hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we write this function that takes in a number, and if that number is even, it will return true. If not, it returns false. So for 1, it's not even, it returns false. For 2, it is even, it returns true. 3, false. 4, true. 5, false. 6, true. So this function is just returning true or false. And then ultimately, whichever calls return true, those are going to be the values that show up in the resulting array. So because 2 is even, our resulting array will have 2 in it, we'll have 4 in it, and we'll have 6 in it. So the idea of filter is this function either returns true or false. If it returns true, that given element will show up in the resulting array. What do you think of this visual, Tony?
I like it. Makes sense.
Makes sense. Okay. Let's see a little bit more information about it. So here's an example of doing it with a for each. So we start off with an empty array called even numbers. And then for each number, we check to see, is it divisible by 2? And then if it is, we push it into this array. Great. But if we want to write it with a filter, instead of pushing into an array, we just return true or false. So what this says is even numbers is equal to filtering over numbers. And if the given number is divisible by 2, so this will return true if it is or false if it's not. So if that returns true, that given number will show up in the resulting array. And if it wasn't, it won't. Let's take a quick stretch. Okay, Tony. Does this look weird to you?
No, this is kind of like map, but
okay,
with a different context.
Yeah, because we're returning a true or false instead. One thing I'll show, though, is we're just returning that right there. We could actually write this logic out. We could do something like if that, return true, else return false. These two things do exactly the same thing. It's just that since this itself returns a Boolean, we're just returning that thing itself. Make sense?
Yeah. I at first, like the way you were explaining it, like it made more sense that it was just going to be like the second example, but
yeah,
I think the first example just looks cleaner.
Yeah, and you can write it either way. And you could also store this function in a variable. We haven't really done this, but you could define this outside above it, give it a name, and then you actually just pass that function in, and that will filter over it. Okay. When to use filter? The main reason you would use filter is if you want a new array with only some of the elements in your current array, right? You use map when you want a new array of the same length with some operation performed on the elements. You use filter when you want a new array of potentially a shorter length with only the elements that match a given condition. So with that, let's try some exercises. Okay, so we had an example of this, but we're just gonna write it out. Create a new array with only the even numbers.
And then we're going to basically say this could be like whatever we want.
Yes, so you can name the argument whatever you want. In this case, it makes sense to call it number, sure. And then this function that you write is going to return true if it's even or false if it's not even. Okay, and then let's log it out. I think you might have done this wrong, Tony. This says, what is the remainder of 2 divided by that number?
Wait, should be number divided by 2.
Well, number mod 2, yeah.
Number.
You still want the modulo operator because this
I'm
returns.
sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Returns the remainder of the division. So, if we run this file, you did it! Yay, Tony! Yay. Okay, let's try another one. I want you to create a new array with only the days that start with the letter T. So you have this array of days, and I want a new array with only the days that start with the letter T.
Okay. So, const. We're gonna call it Tony days.
Hey, okay, T days, yeah.
Days dot filter day. So we're gonna say return day dot index of 0 equals T.
So you're really close. Like what you're trying to do here is say like I want to look at the first letter of the day.
Would it be chair?
Wait, what?
Like the character?
You could do you could do charat, but you could also use bracket notation because a string is technically like an array of characters. So if you say string bracket 0, that will give you the first character in the string.
Okay.
But what you just mentioned would also work. Let's write it this way, and then we'll see the other way too. So we're gonna log the Tony days. There we go. Tuesday and Thursday. Very good. But yeah, let's write that again, but use char at instead of bracket 0. I think my editor will help you. Yeah, char at, and then you pass in the index with parentheses because char at is a function.
Oh, okay. And it's like one parameter.
Yeah. And so that'll give you the first character, and then you're checking to see. Awesome. So, getting the hang of this, but like our input array has a lot of things in it. We have some sort of test we're performing, and then our output array only has certain elements that match that test. And same thing here. We start with all of the days of the week. Our test is to see if that day starts with the letter T, and if it does, that will show up in our resulting array. All right. Moving right along, people. Create a new array with only the peoples whose first name is less than 4 characters long. So this one gets a little bit trickier because you are dealing with an object instead of just like a number or a string. So you're going to have to use dot notation. But yes, we'll create a new variable. So short names is going to be the name of our new array. And then
what was the name of the people?
It's called people, okay. Yeah. So we're going to filter over people.
Filter.people dot name.
Well, what is each thing in this array?
Names.
I would call it a person. I mean, right now they only have a first name and a last name, but technically they could have other properties too. You can call it whatever you want. There's a question from Pedro in the chat. I come from a C background. Why do people use triple equals in JavaScript? So JavaScript has 2 equality comparisons. There's the double equals and the triple equals. A double equals will perform type coercion. So triple equals checks to make sure that the 2 things you're comparing are the same type and have the same value. With a double equal, if the 2 things you're comparing aren't the same type, one of them will be converted using the coercion algorithm to see if they're equal after it's been converted. So the idea is if you use triple equals, you are making sure that it won't convert the type. You're making sure that it's the same value and the same type. Cool. I think you did it, Tony. You're getting good at this, man. So, Kyle and CJ both have names less than 4 characters long. This could have been ambiguous. What if we did like that, then only CJ shows up? But you're definitely getting the idea. Like, it is a comparison that's either returning true or false, right? Are you still there, Tony? Yeah, you okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right, moving right along to aminals or animals. I want you to create a new array with only the animals of size small.
Okay. All right. So. Oh.
Yes, we will use const. Use const.
Small animals equals animals. Dot filter. And return animal dot size is small.
All right. Let's log it out. Ayo. There we go. Cat and dog were the only ones that were small in there. Tony, I'm very proud of you. Like, you're just running through these. Cool. Okay, last one. It's kind of similar to what we did earlier, but you have this array of words. Create a new array with only the words with a length longer than 6.
Return word length greater than 6.
All right, let's give it a try. Log. Would you look at that? Awesome. Okay, so you are getting the hang of it. Like, this function returns true if that thing should be in there, false if it won't, and if it returns true, those things show up in the new array. Beautiful. One thing we haven't been talking about that we kind of talked about last time is like, especially when your arrow functions are so small, you can write them on a single line. So if we could actually just write this, and this does exactly the same thing. Let's comment this one out. Does exactly.
I think it just like helps me knowing the way I understand functions to work. It like helps seeing the curly brackets.
No, definitely. And one thing I would suggest is like, especially if this syntax looks really weird to you, write it like this first, and then realize, okay, we have an arrow function that has one line and returns that line. So we can rewrite it on a single line, because when you write a single line arrow function like this, there's an implicit return, an implied return, that it's going to return this, which is either true or false. Cool. And every other function we wrote, we could do a very similar thing. So instead of writing out the return, you could write it on a single line. Yeah, awesome. Tony, how you feeling?
I feel pretty good.
You did great, man. I think, like, so we've been streaming for close to an hour now. I think I want to wait till next time to do reduce, because this one does get a little bit trickier, and I know you do have things to do. Thoughts, comments,
Yes.
questions about this stuff?
I feel a little bit sorry for that we didn't get like further along than I'd like to have gotten, but
No worries, man. Like, I think one of the things is we did the review. I'm glad we did the review, because we could have jumped right into filter, but then you might have forgotten about first class functions, or like the fact that you can pass functions to other things. So I think it was good to just do like a nice refresher of those things before we jumped into filter.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, but then definitely next time we will finish up with reduce. Okay, anyone that was watching from home, the link to this repo is in the description, so you can check that out. I'll push up the code that we wrote to the solutions branch, but the master branch doesn't have any solutions, so you can go in here and give a try some of these exercises that we solved. Which is a simple comment with what you need to do to make that happen. Let's see. Check out my YouTube channel. Mert John, it is. Yeah, Tony has to go a little bit early today. So we're actually going to do reduce next time. Apologies. So, we do have some upcoming live streams, which I have not put on here, but tomorrow I'm going to be doing code katas. I believe Mert John actually. Mert John suggested one. I think that was you. So if you go to Coding Garden / code katas, and you click under issues, you can suggest problems that you'd like me to solve. Yes, that's you. I will attempt to do this one. I will say this one is worded very interestingly. It's kind of hard to parse what it's asking you to do, but I will definitely give this one a try tomorrow night. A good comment from Alvaro saying missing 2 arguments in map and filter. Yes, so we kind of talked about this last time, but a map also accepts the index and the array itself. But if you're not using those things, you technically don't have to pass it in. But you get the value, you get the index in the array, and then you get the array itself in the function. So we just have some examples here of showing how to do that. It really depends on the kind of map that you're doing, whether or not you need access to those 2 things. I'll say in the exercises for map, these last 2 are examples of problems where you actually do need to use the index and the array inside of the map. So if you want to give that a try, you can practice those. And then filter is exactly the same way. I didn't have any problems or exercises where we practiced using the index and the array. But just like map, you get access to the value itself, the index, and the array that it was called on. Cool. All right, Ollie, thanks. Yeah, I'll do the Trello thing pretty soon. And yes, Mert John, I'll give that one a try. So if you check back on my channel, I will have links here to the stream for tomorrow and the morning tea stream for Thursday. And then on Thursday, I am going to be doing a full stack Reddit clone with Firestore and Vue.js. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Also, you can join the Discord. If you look in the description of this video, there's a link to a survey where you can join the Discord. You can donate if you feel like it, or become a Patreon, or a patron on Patreon if you feel like it. Not required, but if you feel like it, you can. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. I will see you tomorrow, most likely. Any last words, Tony?
Not much. Yeah, I say check out the Discord.
Yeah, it's a good time. We're a lot of people have started to kind of like trickle in, talking about stuff. There's also it's not very active right now, but we do have a live channel. I'll post in here anytime I go live if you want to get a notification there. And we do have help channels as well. So if you're watching some of my other tutorial videos and you want to ask like specific help, that's a good place to ask it also. All right, yeah. See you later, Mert John, Ali, Alvaro. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you next time. Pedro, see ya. Here's me. Hey, Coding Train. Go watch Coding Train. And this.